All right, let's get into it. For years, one of the most common everyday things you could do in Kenya carried a hidden risk. A pretty big one, actually. And that risk has just now, finally, been fixed. But the story of why it took so long, well, that tells you a whole lot about data privacy.
I mean, just think about your own week for a second. How many times do you use M-Pesa? You're at the supermarket, you send your rent, you pay a business using a pay bill. These are just totally normal, routine things that happen millions and millions of times every single day all across the country.
But here's the thing. Here's what was happening behind the scenes with every single one of those payments. The person you were paying, your landlord, the supermarket, whoever, they got a confirmation message. And that message, it had your full name and your complete 10-digit phone number right there. And this slide really shows you the difference, plain as day. Before this week, all your details were just out there. But now, the recipient only gets your first name and a masked phone number. I mean, this is a huge and honestly a very long overdue change for privacy. Okay, so let's break down exactly what this new feature is all about. It really comes down to this idea called data minimization, which is just a fancy way of saying you only share the information that is absolutely necessary and nothing more. So the way it works is actually pretty simple. The person on the other end sees a masked number, with those stars in the middle, and your name gets shortened. What's really important, though, is that the actual transaction details, the amount, the date, all of that stays exactly the same. The whole point is just to cut down on the personal data being passed around, not to mess with the payment itself. But you might be wondering, what if someone legitimately needs to know it was me, like my landlord? Well, they've thought of that. There's a new system based on your consent. The recipient can forward the message to a special number, and that sends a request directly to you. You then get to decide. You can either accept or decline to share your full details for just that one transaction. The power is now in your hands. You're in control.
And this is a perfect example of a really important concept in the tech world, privacy by design. It means you don't just add privacy features later as a patch. No, you build data protection and user consent right into the DNA of the product from the very beginning. This M-Pesa change, it's a textbook case.
But this leads us to the most uncomfortable question in this whole story. The change is great, for sure, but it really makes you ask one simple thing. Why on earth did this take so long? This timeline really says it all. Kenya's Data Protection Act, the law that basically required this kind of change, was passed way back in 2019. But for 6 years after that law came into effect, nothing changed for M-Pesa users. It wasn't until February of this year that the Central Bank of Kenya finally gave the green light for this feature to be rolled out. I mean, that's a 6-year gap between the law being passed and action being taken. So what this really points to is a bigger structural problem. The law was on the books, but the system just wasn't set up for regulators to go out and force companies to follow it. Instead, the whole thing depended on companies like Safaricom to come up with a solution and then ask for permission, a process that, as we can see, was super slow and disjointed. And look, this delay wasn't just some abstract theoretical problem. This data leak had a very real, very tangible cost for millions of ordinary Kenyans. Just look at this number from 2025. Almost half, 46% of all Kenyan consumers said they were targeted by digital fraud. That is a staggering number, and you can bet the M-Pesa data leak was a huge reason why. Here's exactly how the scam worked. Scammers would get your full phone number from these transaction messages. Then they'd call you up, pretending to be from Safaricom or saying they sent you money by mistake. And because they had your name and number, they sounded legit, right? From there, it was easy to trick you into sending the money back or even giving up your PIN. This whole scam was literally fueled by that data being so easy to get. So if we zoom out a bit, this one little feature change really opens up a much, much bigger conversation. This isn't just about M-Pesa. It's about the entire state of data governance in Kenya. And to really get the stakes here, you have to understand the scale we're talking about. M-Pesa isn't just another app. It's basically the financial backbone of the entire economy. You've got 38 million users making almost 140 million transactions every single day. The data it holds is basically a map of Kenyan life. And that leads to these much deeper, unanswered questions. Okay, so masking the number on a text message is one thing. That's great. But what happens to the full, unmasked data that Safaricom still has? How is that data shared with banks, other fintech companies, and even the government? And how do you get clear answers when you have different regulators for finance, communications, and data all sort of overlapping? These are the big questions that still need to be answered.
So let's be crystal clear here. This change is a good thing. It is without a doubt a positive step that is going to reduce fraud and give Kenyans more control over their own data. But it is also a profoundly, profoundly overdue change. And that leaves us with this one last critical question to think about. The law that required this was passed in 2019. It took 6 years of customer complaints and regulatory back and forth to get this one seemingly obvious fix done on the country's most important platform. So if it took 6 years for this, what else is still out there just waiting?